class. This is Instructor Fran, and I wanted to check in with you because in week 1, we are going to be working on our first learning objective for our class, which is to analyze the relevant characteristics of our target audience. Now, I realize that's a mouthful, but what that means in a nutshell is that in order to achieve our purpose when we're writing, we have to think about who we are writing to and adjust how we are writing to best meet that audience, to best reach, for the message to best reach them. So this is something that I think affects any type of communication we have, but I really want to connect this to the workplace because I think it's very relevant there. So when I'm writing in the workplace, some people talk about adjusting your writing to the age of somebody or their gender or their race or where they're from. And I don't tend to do that. I don't really think of it that way. I tend to think of it, I kind of have 4 bigger questions that I have in my mind. So the first question I have is, what is my relationship with this person, this audience that I'm writing to? So think about if I'm writing to my boss and I work in a larger organization, I'm going to use a different tone and I might have different content than if I'm writing to a coworker. So let's say that I'm unhappy with the grading policy and I want to make the late policy, I want to make it more lenient, that students have more days to hand us late assignments in. If I want to write a message to my boss about this, I'm probably going to be more formal and have more evidence and have language that's more professional and look at my writing in more detail when I'm done to make sure that it's free from error so that I put my best foot forward. If I'm going to write something to a coworker about this that I know well, I might be more casual. I might have more slang in there. I might not worry as much about editing it and revising it when I'm done. So it's important in the workplace to make sure that you think about what your relationship is like with who you're writing to and tailor your message to that person. And a lot of times that means you're somewhere along that continuum of being really formal all the way to being really casual or anywhere in between. Okay, so then the second thing that I like to think about is I kind of tie in what I am, the audience, to my purpose. I think about what am I trying to get them to do? So in this scenario that I talked about, if I'm writing to my boss about how I'm unhappy with the late policy, maybe I'm wanting them to change it. So I would have a different content in it than if I'm just venting to a coworker about the late policy, how I don't like it. So I think about what my purpose is and how that connects to my audience, and that would change oftentimes the information that I'm going to include, whether it's going to be more evidence-based and trying to convince and persuade them with my boss, or whether I'm just trying to get my ideas out and vent to my coworker. Okay, the next thing that I like to think about is I like to think about whether I think this person is going to agree or disagree, or whether they're neutral on the subject. If they agree with me, then maybe I'm not working as hard to give them reasons why they should agree with me, but maybe I'm working harder to help convince them to make a change. If someone disagrees with me, I would probably, or maybe if they're neutral, I might work a little harder to have ideas in there that relate to why my opinion, I think, is correct. Okay, and then the one last thing that I like to think about is I like to think about what is the level of knowledge that this person has on this subject already. If they have in-depth knowledge in this subject, then I'm not going to spend as much time building context. I might not have to define as many terms. I might be able to be more complex. And what I'm talking about, if I'm writing to someone who has less knowledge about a subject, then I have to take that time to, one, provide the necessary context and background information, and two, I might have to adjust the level of complexity of like how deep I go into something according to how much they already know about it. So, I think in a workplace, this is a good example. So maybe my coworkers and I are noticing that there's a problem with this late penalty, and we have more knowledge about it than my boss does. So I have to give the boss a lot more background information on how this is affecting my students, where my coworker, if I'm writing to my coworker, he or she might already know a little more about that. So what's the level of knowledge that your audience has? And I need to, when I'm writing, workplace or home, I adjust that my content to how much knowledge they have, to either give them the support that they need or to give them the level of depth that they need. So when you're working on any piece of writing, and when you're working on this week 1 assignment, I want you to think about these questions. Okay, what's your relationship like? How is the audience serving my purpose? Do they agree or disagree, or are they neutral? And then finally, what level of expertise do they have in this subject? Those 4 things are the big things when I'm thinking about my audience, when I'm writing, that I have to answer for myself in order to have the best content I can and to achieve the purpose that I'm trying to in my writing. Please reach out with any questions. I hope that helped.